I had no idea that there would be only one casualty, and it would be my mom.
It happened in seconds, and its impact lingers nearly 2 years later.
An explosion that rocked an Aurora community and claimed one woman's life.
There were a lot of warning signs leading up to the explosion.
Could it have been prevented? Tonight, for the first time since the deadly explosion and fire, the son of the victim is speaking out.
He talked to Chief Investigative Reporter Tony Kovaleski because he says this should not have happened. We begin with the latest information on that explosion and fire at Heather Gardens in Aurora.
It was a Friday afternoon, less than a week before Thanksgiving.
On came the breaking news of a big fire in Aurora.
At first, Derek Ross was like any other viewer. He had no idea he was watching a fire in the community where his mom called home.
Dozens of residents were forced out of their homes because of all this.
Watching this, I believe it was helicopter shots, looking down on the scene.
We looked through there and the flames were just shooting up.
And seeing, wow, that's a really big fire.
Carol Ross died 3 days after her 82nd birthday, a violent death that required cadaver dogs to locate her remains inside the rubble.
The moment when you recognized that this was your mom's house that day?
There wasn't anything recognizable, that's for sure.
In the days and months that followed, questions about how and why were investigated by the Aurora Fire Department, an investigation that looked closely at a cable installation project by Comcast that spanned several months. Records reviewed by Denver 7 Investigates expose a telling timeline.
There were a lot of warning signs leading up to the explosion.
3 months before the explosion, a Heather Gardens Maintenance Committee report includes Comcast fiber option. Some locates were missed and they hit a water line. So far, the installers have hit water lines, phone lines, electrical lines. On October 23rd, about 3 weeks before the explosion, this Aurora fire incident shows construction crews cut a gas line, requiring evacuation. Less than a week later, on October 29th, another gas line cut by crews working for Comcast. Then 2 weeks later, on November 13th, Aurora Fire responded to a third gas leak in less than a month at Heather Gardens. And the next day, November 14th, the fourth leak, where workers stated they had been digging and broke a gas line.
It was just increasing anger over realizing that there were enough warning signs that it all could have been prevented.
Just 2 days after that fourth broken gas line, crews hit a line for the fifth time in less than a month. This time, it led to the fire and explosion that ended Carol Ross's life.
Should have been prevented, not could have. This should never happen. This is outrageous.
Attorney Mike Berg represents Ross's children.
They continued to dig, they continued to hit lines. XL Energy didn't do anything, Comcast didn't do anything, the subcontractor didn't do anything, and ultimately a horrible, horrible death occurred as a result of that.
There are also questions about the response in the hours and minutes before Carol's home exploded. At 4:04 p.m., Aurora Fire got the first call saying, hit a gas line doing work. 11 minutes later, the report shows the crew on scene was notified by dispatch that Excel would have an extended ETA. In fact, Excel reported to the federal government that it took 36 minutes after learning of the leak for a crew to arrive at Heather Gardens. And now at 5:29 p.m., 85 minutes after the first report of the gas leak, gas was still leaking. A crew on scene reports there was an explosion.
I guess the average person's going to watch this report and say, how did this happen? What's the answer?
Well, gross negligence on all parties.
And perhaps most telling, the Aurora Fire report includes, in fact, there were no locates for utilities done. That says the crews hired by Comcast likely had no idea where the gas lines were located prior to the explosion. That may also explain 5 gas line breaks in less than a month. Comcast and Excel both declined requests to answer our questions. In a statement, Comcast offered sympathies to Carol Ross's family and wrote, Comcast's first priority is the public safety, and we continue to work with our construction business partners to ensure adherence to all applicable safety regulations. Xcel's statement included, the natural gas line at Heather Gardens was hit by a third party. Our crews were on site after being called out due to the smell of natural gas. Neither company acknowledged any responsibility for the explosion and fire.
Is there a plausible excuse for what happened to your mom?
No, there's no excuse for it. I don't think it's acceptable. Nobody wants to take responsibility for something this terrible that happened.
Officially, the Aurora Fire investigation concluded the explosion and fire were caused by an unintentional human act or omission. The district attorney used that report to decide not to file criminal charges. So now, the Ross family will turn to a civil jury to ask for some sort of accountability. I'm Chief Investigative Reporter Tony Kowaleski.